Good morning and welcome to worship. This is our sermon titled Dreams. We are back in the Old Testament with another fun filled and extremely uncomfortable story. It starts with a wife and a son tricking an elderly, dying man with reduced capabilities out of the most important thing he had to give. Culture dictated, and honestly, Esau was the favorite of Isaac's, that the elder son be given the blessing of his father. Last week, it was a child being mistreated. This week, the elderly. What is happening, Old Testament? Well, life, unfortunately. We have a bit of a Red Riding Hood interaction here. Do you remember that? Oh, Grandma, what big eyes you have. Isaac, despite his diminished vision and knowing that death was near, seemed to recognize Jacob, but is thoroughly gaslit into believing that Jacob is Esau. Now, we're going to go back a bit because last week when we left Isaac, he was just a boy who was probably traumatized by his father. Now, he grows up, and Sarah and Abraham do not want their son to marry from the women in the country they live in. So they sent a servant back home and to find a wife in the home country. And the servant found a woman named Rebecca. Rebecca and Isaac fall in love, get married, and when Rebecca was pregnant, she has a dream because she felt so much rumbling in her pregnant belly. And God tells her that there are twins, Esau and Jacob. And God tells her that the elder would serve the younger, and the younger would be blessed and beloved by God. So it was Rebecca who set things in motion, knowing, like I said, that not only was Esau the eldest, but that Isaac preferred him. She knew the plans that God had, and so she just took the steps to assure that they would happen. And honestly, she kind of preferred Jacob. This is why we're not supposed to play favorites as parents. It never ends well. The blessing that Isaac had to give was not just a simple gesundheit or a blessing on a birthday card. This was all his resources, his wealth, livestock, the best tent, the slaves. It was Isaac's honor and reputation. And in an honor-based society, that meant a lot. It was the tradition and the lineage and the future. And the father had but one of these blessings to give and could only give it once. There were no takebacks. But Isaac's blessing was even bigger than all of that. It was a blessing from God to be part of a mighty and special people, a lineage that would grow to be more numerous than the stars. You could say there was a cosmic implication to this blessing. So it was given to the younger son, Jacob. It was tricked out of Isaac and given to Jacob. Now we skipped the part of the story where Esau comes back and Isaac and Esau realize what happens, and both are just heartbroken and distraught. And Esau is so angry that he threatens Jacob's very life. Rebecca arranges to have Jacob go to her family and marry a woman from her people, but also to save his life. Now, even though Esau didn't get the official blessing due to Jacob's flight, Esau does inherit all the material holdings of their father. And Esau was already married and had been blessed with children of his own and property of his own. So he was just made all the richer. And this is probably why when Esau and Jacob meet again many, many years from now, Esau forgives him and they embrace as brothers. Until then, Jacob is on the run. Jacob has no tent, no blanket, no pillow on which to rest his head. He is in full survival mode, focused on getting to Haran, to the household of his mother's family, where he would hopefully find safety and acceptance. But God desperately needed Jacob to stop at a particular place, at the place that would be called Bethel. Jacob was so focused on his goal of getting away, of getting to where he needed to be. He was so focused on the path and where each foot fell. He was so focused on his goal, his destination, his fears, his anxieties, that he was missing the presence of God around him. When Jacob does finally stop, lay down his head, and cease from his journey and his goals, is when he finally hears what God has to say. Jacob needed to be asleep to hear from God. Not just stopped from his journey, but stopped from focusing only on himself and his own thoughts. In his dream, he sees a ladder, as it is often translated, but was probably better translated as stairs, because like step pyramids in the ancient world, which is a way more dignified way of thinking about divine beings climbing a ladder than thinking about divine beings climbing a ladder and having to navigate around each other as others come down. I like to think of them now as divine mall escalators. In this dream, God makes a promise to Jacob, and it is like before for Abraham, a promise of land and descendants and presence. Now, we stopped our reading, but if we would have kept reading, we would see that Jacob responds to God, "If you keep your promises, then I will call you my God." Jacob is basically saying, prove it. He doesn't seem to have grown up knowing God like Abraham knew God, and I can't help but wonder if that's because of what Isaac went through as a child. But God is faithful, and God does prove it, because it is through Jacob that there are 12 sons, and Joseph will assure the survival of many in and around Egypt during a famine, and Jacob will be called Israel. His children will bear the names of the tribes of the people who bear his name. But here, in this moment, with a rock for a pillow, a flawed and broken human who tricked and schemed and lied, who ran instead of facing his problems, here is Jacob being blessed by God. And when Jacob awakens, he realizes what God was trying to say all along, that God was present in this place, and he had missed it. It says something about God that even Jacob, imperfect Jacob, is blessed. These Old Testament stories are hard. They can be uncomfortable because we don't like seeing the humanity in them, I think. Because if we're honest, we are much closer to those Old Testament characters than we are to Jesus. See, with Jacob and like with us, it wasn't about him or who he was at all or what he had done. It was all about who God is. God of blessing, of love, of the unexpected. God was doing something unexpected, countering the way people decided the world worked, showing up in desolate and unexpected places. Amid chaos and uncertainty, in the terror and the fear, God showed up and offered a blessing, promised to be with Jacob always. Where have you experienced the divine? What unexpected places did God show up for you? At the birth of a child? In the presence of a beloved relative? In a conversation with a loved one? In the song of birds? The burbling of a stream? Holding the hand of a parent or grandparent in their final moments? It is in those moments we often experience God, because we often put ourselves aside and we're fully present in the moment. And that makes space for God to be known to us. But how often have we shown up, somewhere we think will be a holy place, and find nothing. We say, "Here I am, God. Where are you?" Maybe it's when you come to church, but the sermon just doesn't hit for you. Maybe you go on a hike, expecting an experience with the Creator in creation, but you find yourself surrounded by people who are walking and talking loudly, scaring off all the creatures, trampling the beautiful flowers. Maybe you go to a concert and expect to experience the divine and the beauty and harmony of music, but you just can't seem to get past the guy in front of you humming and singing along. Maybe. There are 100 ways we might expect to find God and feel that we arrive alone. But I don't believe God ever leaves us. I believe the promise of God's presence that was given to Jacob and repeated in Psalm 139, my favorite psalm. Where could I go to get away from your spirit? Where could I go to escape your presence? If I went up to heaven, you would be there. If I went down to the grave, you would be there too. If I could fly on the wings of the dawn, stopping only to rest on the far side of the ocean, even there your hand would guide me. Even there your strong hand would hold me tight. Sometimes we are so focused on finding God, or we are so focused on our own self, on our own goals, and our own expectations, that we don't see that God is already here with us always. What would happen if we remained open without expectations? Where might we find God? What unexpected places or people or situations might God show up? God shows up along the way. God shows up in the in-between. Jacob is changed a little, but he will continue to be changed by this experience and by the faithfulness of God throughout his life. This is not unique to Jacob. God still meets us in unexpected places, in unexpected ways. God still loves the world in the way that it intended to be, and not with the priorities that we have imposed upon the world. God still blesses us, still calls us beloved, still gives us a promise, a purpose, a call, a mission, that our blessings and the love we've been given are not just for ourselves, but to be a blessing to creation and other people as much as we can. And we discover God when we stop and rest. That's a hard one. But when we stop working, stop moving, just stop. When we stop thinking that we're the reason for our blessings, when we stop thinking we're so clever for making things work out our way, when it stops being about us, we discover that God has been there all along. Imagine what we might enjoy anew if we stop putting our goals, destinations, and expectations on every moment and just experienced the moment for what it is. Even God stopped to rejoice and enjoy creation. The truth is, God is present in our everyday. God is present in our struggle and our trouble and our chaotic times and lives, in our grief and suffering, when we are lost or stuck, when we are wandering, when we are uncertain. God is with us. God shows up in love, in peace, in the presence of a stranger, in the kind word of a friend, in the morning glories that greet the day with purple beauty, and the sunset that catches the sky on fire. God is present with us when we seek certainty in a world that is anything but. Not always to give us clear answers, unfortunately, but what God does give us is hope. And God reminds us to choose love. God is with us in community. Whenever we gather as a church, as families, friends, strangers, in classrooms, at work, anywhere, God is present. God is present in the kindness, compassion, empathy that are shared with us and we with others and each other. And God is present in our conflicts as we work toward reconciliation. God is with us in our uncertainty, in our doubts, even in our anger. God is with us. God is always trying to get our attention because we are a fickle people. We are a distracted people. God wants to remind us that God is near us, in the face of our neighbor, in the creation around us. Whenever love is shared, when there is healing and reconciliation, God is present. Where will you look for God this week? Maybe someplace new, unexpected, different people. If you do, be open to what God is doing there in the people you meet. Maybe this week you will stop and rest and enjoy creation and experience God in a time of Sabbath. Maybe you'll connect with someone you've lost touch with, or someone you've wronged, or someone who's wronged you, and take a step toward reconciliation and forgiveness. And maybe you'll find God in the healing. Stop and look for God because God is there always. God does not turn from us, we turn from God. So be on the look. Be open. Let God work in your life, whether it's going well or whether it's going hard or somewhere in between, because God is always there. Amen.